And now I'd like to move on to our next presentation. Judy has already introduced Christine Ross, our new scholarly communications librarian, and she's going to talk about copyright and authors' rights.
Okay. So the title of our event today, I don't know if you had noticed, was Scholarship, Open Access Scholarship Unbound. And copyright is actually can be a very binding law. So that's kind of my theme is, how to unbind your own scholarship, loosen it from the binds of traditional publishing agreements. There's several reasons, and a lot of them have been mentioned already today, particularly by our Open Access Publishing Fund recipients, as to why we publish and how we want to use the research that we do publish. A couple of those reasons already mentioned is that we want to make an impact. We want to build our reputation, have the opportunity to collaborate with other scholars in our field. And then once we publish that research, we want it to be used. We want it to be used by the public, particularly when we're talking about medical research. The importance of public access to research is very critical. We want to be able to share it with our students in our classrooms. We may want to use parts of it in future scholarly projects. So there's different reasons motivating the desire to publish, aside from the promotion and tenure aspect of it and that kind of push to publish. There are certainly more, other kinds of reasons to publish. However, as many of you who have published in traditional scholarly journals know, that in order to publish your work, the publishers ask from you, several things. Namely, they want you to transfer all of your copyright, which is yours the moment you write that article. They want you to transfer that entirely to them. Once you write that article, the copyright in that article belongs to you until you give it away. I've written up here kind of a typical clause. If you've ever, as I'm sure several of you have seen, a traditional typical publication agreement. And the paragraph here actually comes from one. I won't name the publisher. And what this paragraph, in a sense, is saying is that you are giving up your right to distribute copies of your work. You're giving up the right to even make copies to use in your own classroom or even to distribute to your own students. You're giving up the right to make derivative works, whether it's to include your article maybe as a chapter in a book, or to perhaps use parts of it if you're going to develop your research further. And then you also are giving up the right to archive that published copy, whether you want to deposit it in UF's institutional repository or deposit it perhaps with a discipline-specific repository or any other sort of archive where you would like to store your work. However, the publishers really don't need this complete and exclusive transfer of your copyrights in order for them to do their business and to make money. All they really need is just a non-exclusive right to publish your work and to distribute it by publishing it in their journal, and in return they can charge money for that through their subscription if they wish. You need to give them the right to for them to attribute it and to require others to attribute the article back to them as the first publisher of this work. Again, just kind of making sure that they get their plug when the article is later cited. And then also give them the right to republish that article, say if it's a print journal, and then they migrate to maybe an online journal, to give them that right to kind of move that content with the journal in case there's a format change. That's really all that they need. They don't need a complete and exclusive transfer. So what can you do? You do not have to, yes, I guess some publishers will make you feel like you have to, but you do not have to give them this complete and total transfer. So here's some things that you should do before signing this kind of all or nothing type of agreement. Make sure you do read it carefully. And if you have questions about it, you can certainly contact me. I can give it a look. The General Counsel's office might be willing to give it a look. Maybe you have a well-published colleague who is very familiar with these in case you have questions about, what the terms in that agreement mean. You can ask. There's nothing saying you cannot ask the publisher to retain your copyrights. Until you sign that document, those are still yours. And so, don't be afraid to negotiate with them. You can edit the agreement directly. You can write on, write with a W, write on the document itself, leave a place for you each to initial that these changes and edits are going to be accepted as part of the final agreement. Another easy thing to do, and something that publishers are becoming very open to and familiar with, are to use an author's addendum to the contract. The organization SPARC has a very well-known and well-respected agreement amongst a lot of the publishers are familiar with it and can be accepting to it. And that agreement, in essence, amends the publisher's agreement so that you're only transferring to the publisher those things that they actually need for them to do their business. Of course, like I said, there might be some publisher, and it might be the publisher of the journal that is like the journal in your field, and you just may not have a choice. You have to publish your article. So what can you do? Well, you can just, there's nothing saying you can't just publish that article as planned and just chalk it up as, well, maybe the next article I write I might want to investigate some other journal, or you can just do just that. Look for another journal, perhaps one that is a little bit more flexible in negotiating their publication agreements. Or, as our publishing fund recipients have done, consider publishing in an open access journal. There's certainly more and more of those coming about in lots of different fields, and ones that are published by very reputable publishers. But as Dr. Sato pointed out, there are some out there who are very predatory, and I am making a list of who those are. I think you've heard some of these already. What are the benefits to you as an author from publishing in open access? The research becomes freely available and in a rather expeditious manner to your students, to your colleagues, not only at your own institution, but your peers at other institutions as well. It gives you, wider recognition, opening up the doors to collaborate on future projects. It also allows you to retain your copyright. It gives you more control over the rights that are yours to begin with. It is not giving away your copyright by publishing in an open access journal. Folks still have to properly cite to your work, have to give you proper attribution and credit. It's not a license for someone to steal your work and call it your own just because it's in an open access journal. That's a very sometimes common misunderstanding when people hear a very frequently used definition of open access is using it as unrestricted. And that's a very confusing term because some folks, when they hear unrestricted, they equate that term meaning it's unrestricted, meaning someone can use it however they want, rather than unrestricted as in it's available, it's not behind a paywall. So, unrestricted does not mean public domain. You still, own copyrights in it. And again, there's many studies out there regarding the impact and citation rates for open access, and they really do rival and sometimes exceed what print journals in the same field are having. So how do you find an open access journal in your own field? Well, Isabel mentioned the directory of open access journals. I've put the URL up here. There's both fully open access journals, there are hybrid journals, and then of course we also encourage you to, of course, apply for funding should you decide to publish in one of these. Also consider depositing your work always in the UF institutional repository, or if your field has, for instance, those in physics are probably familiar with archive, also consider publishing or depositing your work there as well. So just a mantra to kind of remember, it's your research, understand your rights, read those publisher agreements. Don't just sign them thinking that you have to. You don't have to do anything. Those are your rights until you sign that agreement. Understand the things that you can do to increase your impact. And as always, if you have any questions, I've put my email and phone number up there. I'm always available, whether it's to come to a departmental meeting and talk about open access or copyright. If you have a question on your own and want to send me an email, I am there as a resource. Thank you. And I guess I'll introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Sophia Cord, the Associate Director of the, I hope I said this right, the Humanities in the Public Sphere. Is that sort of correct? Okay.